Greetings and welcome to Macho Movie Mayhem. I am Z1EG3, though you may call me Ziggy. As a gonk droid equipped with advanced protocol and astromech capabilities, I am uniquely designed to assist in today's cinematic mission. While my primary functions are rooted in logic and calculation, my programming also allows me to appreciate the bold, action-packed films we celebrate here. Today, I have the honor of serving as your guest host as we examine one of the most iconic films in action cinema history, the legendary holiday action classic, Die Hard. What did I enjoy about Die Hard? Its perfect blend of high-stakes tension, clever dialogue, and unforgettable characters. John McClane's grit and ingenuity shine against Hans Gruber's sophisticated villainy, making for a timeless clash of hero and antagonist. If I had any criticism, it would be that this masterpiece makes it nearly impossible for other films to match its brilliance. Now, time for my human counterparts to debate what they like and dislike about Die Hard. Let the mayhem begin.
Hey everyone, welcome to Macho Movie Mayhem, a show that looks at movies from a dude's perspective. I'm your host, Ed. Today's guest hosts are Benz, Rob, and Casey. Today's film is the legendary epic film, one of the most badass movies of all time, Die Hard. We'll be looking at 20 categories of how we rank this film using a weighted system that is very unique. We will look to see how manly is the movie Die Hard, how macho is it. So let's get started. Our first category, and probably the most important, is Alpha Hero. So, what did you guys think? How did you rate Die Hard for its Alpha Hero? Benz.
I rated Alpha Hero at 8. That's 1 through 10, being 10 the highest. So I rated it an 8. There's a couple reasons, maybe a few spoiler alerts here. The film starts off with the main character sitting on the plane, and he's scared. He's nervous. So actually, the first view you see of the main actor is he's scared, nervous, and he talks to the guy next to him and talks about taking off his shoes to feel more relaxed. Next thing you know, he doesn't have any shoes the rest of the movie.
Yeah, so John McClane, he's a little nervous on the plane, and the business guy's there. How about you, Rob? What did you think? Did you think that knocked him down some points, or?
Yeah, it does. He's a little timid, but I mean, he makes up for it later on. But I don't like to see a hero gripping the seat, the airline seat. That's a great point. But then he acts so casually cool when the passenger sees the gun next to him. So he's both cool and scared almost simultaneously, real close together.
How about you, Case?
So I rated it a 9 out of 10. I feel like he was pretty casually confident in himself. And when he did come up against any adversity that he had to face, he overcame it, figured out how to get it done, get the job done.
Good. I actually debated on this one for a while. I started off like an 8, then I went, nah, maybe a 9. And I actually ended up giving John McClane a 10. And my reasoning is, yeah, we do see some moments of weakness. He lets his ego get into play early on. He's arguing with his wife, Holly, about her changing her name and moving out to California. And you do see a bit of, ego in there where he's a little intimidated by her success. So I was like, that knocks him down a point or two. There's also some emotional scenes there where when he's picking the glass out of those bare feet, he starts to really get a bit nervous, like he's not going to make it. And he reaches out to Al Powell, Sergeant Al Powell, and starts, venting to him a bit, like, if I don't make it out of this. And so that I was like, maybe it should knock him down a bit. But then ultimately, I decided to give him a 10 because it makes him a much more realistic character. And when we're looking at the 80s, we have Arnold films and Sly films, and they're always trying to be the most badass, perfect human being, muscles bulging, carrying M60s one-handed and like another gun in the other hand, super unrealism. Where with John McClane, we get a real like human element to him. And in that sense, I think it almost makes him, or it does make him more relatable. And as a result of that, I think it actually even makes him more macho in a sense. So I decided to give him a 10 because, like Casey said, ultimately he's alone in this building and he takes out a building full of terrorist criminals, whatever you want to call them. So I gave him a full 10 on it. Uh, but I can
I
see
do
an
like
eight or
that you
nine.
said. I do like that you said that it makes him more realistic. I still gave him an 8, but that's a great point. If he is a real hero, he doesn't want to go out there looking for trouble, always excited. He had that character aspect where he doesn't want what's going on to happen, but the bad guys made the choice for him. And that anxiety that you see between not wanting to do it, nervous, but he has to do it because the enemy or the bad guys made the decision for him that it has to be done. I think that was a good point you kind of had there with being nervous.
Anybody else got anything?
And the scene where the boss man of the Japanese company that they're at, the Christmas party they're at, there's the scene
Takagi.
where he gets killed. John has to watch that, and after that happens, you can see he is upset with himself. He's screaming. He's saying, "Wow, you just let him die, huh?" And so, as you were mentioning, Ed, that he really does have that human element, whereas there are a lot of movies where the alpha hero, you go, okay, the bullets are just avoiding that guy, and it's a bit unrealistic. So, and another point I wanted to add was early on in the movie, you saw when John shows up to the office, he finds out his wife has gone back to her previous name. So you can see he's going through it. His wife's moved from New York to California, and some struggles are going on right there. And so as the movie develops, the alpha hero really develops.
How about you, Casey? Do you have anything else you wanted to add on that?
So I think like the only reason I didn't put him at a 10 is because there are moments of vulnerability, like with the carpet thing and the bare feet. But then he also pushes through an injury from that later in the film. So um, his ability to adapt and overcome and come up with a plan on the spot is impressive. So, and he's got a sort of confidence with himself, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I think overall I love the character. And ultimately, the main reason I decided to go 10 with him, um, aside from the fact that he's more relatable, is you do see kind of a hero's journey with him. And it's represented in, and we'll get to this when we talk wardrobe, it's represented in his like tank top, wife beater, whatever you want to call it. As he gets more rugged in the movie, it gets more disheveled. Uh, but ultimately it's the fact he taunts the terrorists instead of hiding the whole movie. He sends gosh, I can't think of his name now, but he sends his body down in the elevator like ho ho ho, Merry Christmas and such, and he's taunting Hans on the walkie-talkie. I love that aspect to him. So everybody sticking with their score. Anybody making any changes? All right. So we'll move on now to the
Nope.
I come to pump you up, the hero swole factor. For this one, I gave him a 5. I thought he was pretty, he was an average build, but he wasn't like out of shape. He was in shape, but he was average. I could probably go 6 here. Actually, I'm going to bump it up to a 6 because he had some delts going there. So we'll give him a 6, a little bit above average build, but he's definitely no Sly or Arnold, the guys that he would have been competing with in the 80s and early 90s. Next, who else wants to? Any commentary on that?
Yeah, I gave him a 6 as well. I feel the same thing. He's more of like a relatable average guy, but he's got some work that he's put into it. He's not over the top though.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad that I gave him a 4, but usually in movies you'll see the cops either are a really big slob eating donuts, or super jacked, and he must be. I can't remember if he was a detective or just a police officer, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like you normally find in movies somebody who's right in the middle of those two extremes on there.
Like Al eating his Twinkies.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I
Mellow
thought those were
number
donuts. Were they
five.
Twinkies?
Yeah, they're Twinkies. Yeah. How about you, Benz?
I gave him a 4 as well, similar to Rob. One reason is he certainly is not a larger character. I thought in movies after this one, he's been presented much larger, and especially in the mid of the 80s, where uh, drug use was very high. He clearly isn't using them because he'd be significantly larger. So a little surprised. I would actually, that was the first thing I thought when I thought he looked more like Mel Gibson, actually. He looked really like Mel Gibson in this movie than
Yeah,
himself.
not jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all about the same on this one, kind of around average, 4 to 6
That's
range.
probably that's probably to make him more relatable to the people who are watching, So maybe that is for relatability purposes, as opposed to you throw an Arnold Schwarzenegger up there. I ain't got a clue what that's like, not with this body. But a John McClane, yeah, okay. I could kind of understand that part of it.
I think you're right, like with it trying to make it more relatable too, because there's even comments in there where like McClane, I think both times it's McClane referencing it. He references um Rambo and Arnold, like the movie Rambo and then Arnold. So I thought that was kind of funny that they threw in those references. Um, anything else on that, or we want to move on to the next? Okay, next. This is was that
So I feel like we can move on.
okay? The next one's probably going to be one of the more wide gap in our scoring, and that's Badass Bros. So his male allies in the film. For me, I scored it a 7, which is probably gonna come across as a bit high. I'll explain that in a bit, but I'll let others go first. Let's go with you first, Rob.
I scored it a 3. I didn't get like a super motivation like the good guy, the cop was going to come in there. I mean, his battle was the other officers that were kind of over the top with their acting, I guess, but he didn't play a large role in setting or helping McClane. I think he was more of the backdrop. Him and his crew, the people he was working with, was kind of the just another part of the story, not necessarily like any part of the main. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but I gave him a 3 on there. So boy, that was way different.
Yeah, how about you, Benz? You agree or disagree?
I agree with Rob, and I'm looking at my score of 5 and thinking it might have been a little high. There's a few characters that potentially could have been great male allies. The one that ended up kind of being an ally was of course the cop who
Sergeant
like
L.
eat it.
Powell.
Yes, who got all
Yeah.
the food at the gas station at the beginning, and then you had his limo driver, which kind of turned
Argyle.
into he was just kind of comical. That was just a bit of comic relief. And then you had the gentleman who was doing drugs in Holly's office when he arrived, who not only was not an ally, in fact, ended up telling John, just give yourself up after taking a bump. He said, John, just give yourself up. Trust me. And he ended up finding himself getting shot. So the male allies, there were a few potentials, and none of them really panned out very well. So I'm
Yeah,
agreeing with Rob
Captain
here.
Captain Coke Ellis. I ended up almost considering him more of the scum and villainy category than an ally. Same with like the news reporter and such. We'll get into that one in a bit. How about you, Casey? I think you scored him high too, and I think probably for some of the same reasons as I did, but
Yeah,
maybe you
so
change
I
your mind.
scored a 7 um, for the sergeant, just because like he doesn't seem like much early on, and his role is not necessarily interacting with the scum and villain, the villains of the story. But when the deputy chief of police came down and dismissed him, he essentially said, "F you, I'm staying on the phone with this guy, or on the radio," and he continued to help him throughout the story. And then at the end of it, I mean, it's his redemption, his story. So I liked him, so I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
Yeah, I liked him a lot.
I
I
think
think
he's a great character. Go ahead.
I think he was part of that emotional aspect that he had because John kind of he talked to himself a little bit and he kind of there was no communication to another person to relay emotion, and I think they had to write the character of the cop in there to allow him to express himself to the viewer, by talking to the cop, I think.
Yeah, I think if you don't have Al Powell, Sergeant Al Powell, in that, McClane doesn't make it through. And we see, for me, I see a character progression of two characters. I see John McClane and Al Powell. Like Casey, you mentioned at the end when Carl comes out with his gun ready for revenge on John for oops, zoomed in, for his death of his brother. Sorry about that, guys. Um, live recording here. When Carl comes out, you see Al Powell who decided to quit being a street cop and work a desk job because he had shot a young kid with a ray gun, thinking it was a or actual gun. Yeah, like Benz's ray gun there. So you see Al progress from just this guy who's just picking up Twinkies. Oh, they're for my wife, not for me. She's pregnant. To, you know, throwing his car in reverse, hitting everything in his path as he's getting shot at after John drops the body on the car to get his attention. And then, like Casey talked about, like he's arguing with these other, people that are higher up on him. The higher up police officers and even the FBI guys. He's not thrilled with. So Johnson and Johnson. So yeah, I think Al progresses through it, and at the end, he ultimately saves John's life, and he probably keeps John going throughout it. So that's why I rated him high. Argyle didn't really do much, but he did hit the tech safe cracker guy when he was in the ambulance, which that guy character lived, and I think one of the other bad guys lived. I don't know who the other one was, but yeah. So everyone's staying with their scores. Any changes? We had obviously quite a bit of gapping in our reasoning here. Anyone want to change? Stick
I'm
with?
good.
Okay. Badass babes and hotties. This one will also probably have quite the range. I scored it originally. I had it as a 5. I decided to up it though, um, to a 6. Casey, you also had it high, even higher than I did. So I'm going to have you go first on this one.
So what I got here is I put it down as an 8. And my reasoning behind that is like you've got the calendar that you see a couple times. So there's your babe. Um,
Typical
but
80s.
the female sidekick for me was his wife. She didn't know that he was still alive when everything went down. Um, but she kept it quiet, and she figured out real quick that he's still alive and he's working against the villains. And instead of like being a damsel in distress, she figures it out and she plays along and helps steer them away from him so he can do his job. And I just think a lot of people in that situation wouldn't react like that. I think it's amazing character writing that she was able to put two and two together like that and just roll with it. So I put her down for an 8.
Good. Rob, what did you have him at? Have her as rather.
I had her as a 4 just because there wasn't anything explosive about what she was doing to move the plot forward. But yeah, she absolutely maybe she gets her calmness, and I maybe she gets her calmness just because she's lived with him for so long, being a police officer, that she doesn't freak out as easily. She was pretty quick, thinking on her feet the whole time, though, and she, yeah, I just don't think she made massive. impacts to killing the bad guy. So I gave her a 4 on there.
How about you, Benz?
Great. I gave it a 4 as well. Rob and I are really lining up on some of these scores right now. And my reasoning is the wife, Holly, she did not even have that much screen time. At times, there'd be 20, 30 minutes. You wouldn't see her at all in the movie. So, and so then it'd just be all men, which is certainly fine. And when you look at the FBI agents and the police officers, they were all men. The reporter, male as well. So it was predominantly male movie with Holly making appearances. Of course, you have the topless lady in the office when the first thing goes down. But besides her and Holly, there is a good-looking girl on the plane when John is getting off the plane as well. But really, in the first 20 minutes, yes, in the first 20 minutes, you see a good-looking girl, you see topless girls, you see drugs, and then you see guns. So that's the first 25 minutes, and you're right into the action with Die Hard.
So for me, I lined up with Casey more on this, and first I had it really low. And then when I did watch the film to score it, I was like, she's badass. She walks into Hans Gruber's office and starts making demands. This guy is like killing people. He's killed their boss, and he goes, "And who put you in charge?" And she goes, "You did when you killed my boss." And I'm like, that's pretty badass to just walk in to the room. So I couldn't rate her higher than like a 5 or a 6 because she's not, kicking anybody's ass. But to walk into, to the room and Casey, like when we talked about it before on the phone, like you pointed out, she wasn't a damsel in distress. Like she had a bit of that Princess Leia vibe to me. Like Covenant talking, only you could be so bold. Like that vibe to it. And I really like that. So in today's movies, when we look at badass babes, it's like Black Widow, in her like 5'4", 100 pounds, beating some dude that's like 6'5", 250 up. Probably not realistic. Where like how Holly was, is a sassy New Yorker, wife of a cop, like Rob said. Like I just really I like that vibe from her. I think it was a lot more realistic in that sense. So. That's why I gave it a 6.
As we talk about this, it does make me appreciate how clever or great, even though it has some cheesy talk in it, they really did do a good job writing, like a really good recipe for writing. Even though I give low scores on some of these, it really has it all in aggregate came together. It was a really cleverly good written movie.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. Um, Honestly, of action movies, it might be the best overall quality of 80s action movie. I'm sure like a movie like Commando might end up scoring higher on our scoring sheet, but as far as like quality of film, it's Die Hard might be the best. Um, so let's go on to Scum and Villainy. I think most of us went pretty high here. Benz, you and Rob once again aligned, and you were both on the lower end. You gave the Scum and Villainy a 7. Why'd you go that direction?
I went with a 7 because his main objective is just to get the money. He's just trying to get money really, and he doesn't just start killing hostages, which he really could have done. And he had a lot of people up there, and he could just start killing hostages, and he didn't. If the head boss of the Japanese company would have given up his key, he probably wouldn't have killed him either. And so it's actually, I thought he was fairly reasonable. He's a little goofy at sometimes. He always, it's a joke with Die Hard. He's always got the gun in the air, right? And it basically gets him killed. So not the most intimidating looking guy. And then once again, his main goal is just to get money. It isn't to kill a bunch of people, whereas a lot of movies, their goal is to just kill people.
How about you, Rob? You were in agreement with Ben's.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of crazy. We need to hang out and watch movies. No, after these scores, but I think he's not scummy. He's very elegant as a criminal, and his thought process is like very multi-layered. He has he's thinking several layers deep on his plot. You know, it's all diversionary. Which, if you watch later Die Hards, that's kind of how the writers for Die Hard series is there's always uh something that's not real, but everyone thinks is real. It's the real crime, and then of course it's always going to be something else. I don't know. It's multi-layered though. What they did, they thought really deep. The criminal. I just don't think he's scummy, and I don't think he's uh, like a dumb villain. He's a very clever and elegant criminal. I didn't get the title didn't match well with the type of criminal he was.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I guess, yeah, wording that title differently. Like if we were to say like how good of a bad guy he was and such would probably better. I used a lot of movie references when coming up with these. So Scum and Villainy was a Star Wars reference. Um, how about you, Casey? You rated him like me really high, even higher than I did. I
Yeah,
believe
I
you
gave him
gave
a
him a
10.
10.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
gave him a 10. And the reasoning I do that is because he doesn't lay his hand out all at once. Like Rob was saying, he's multi-layered. And so you think, okay, this is kind of simple, they're going to fail, but then there's an extra layer to it that um, he's covered all his bases basically. And like when it comes to him being kind of like goofy and stuff, sometimes I mean, it's Alan Rickman. His like speech cadence is legendary, in my opinion. Um, that's what makes him so. And is my connection still all right?
yeah, we're losing you a little bit.
Okay. But then if you think about it, at the end, he puts all the people up on the roof. He was going to blow them up anyway. So like that's what really kind of puts him over the top is he always planned to kill all those people. So
It's a
that's
good
why I give him
point.
a 10.
He totally just killed your guys. He doesn't kill the hostages argument. He was
Right.
trying to.
Was that a original plan to kill the hostages though, or did that develop?
Yeah.
It was
No, it
always
was
the
it.
original, I
Yeah,
think.
Yeah. So I gave him a 9. I'm a little biased on this. I let cultural bias play a little influence in this. He's not badass in the sense he doesn't get into a big fight with anybody. Um, referring to Hans Gruber directly. Um, but he's diabolical. And like one of the key moments from him is when he's talking to the guy that's cracking in his safe. He's like, "You asked for a miracle, I give you the FBI." And they cut the power, and that's what allows him to get in. So he knew what the FBI would do and how everything would progress. The only thing he didn't account for was that a random cop or detective would be in the building and be even more badass. So that's why I went with a 9 on that. I can certainly see it being lower or higher because he is one of the most iconic villains. And I think that's why, to me, he has to score high is because he's iconic. Like he's one of the rare movie villains where you remember their name. Like even in Commando, like nobody remembers the name of the guy and his they just remember he's wearing chainmail and he's like Australian. But Hans Gruber and for Rickman, that being his first movie too, he had arrived in LA like 3 days before they started filming, and he hadn't done movies really. So but also like looking at the other characters, Carl is vicious. I mean, he gets in that brutal fight with John. There's a few brutal fights with John. Most of the guys are just typical cannon fodder, but there are some other guys. But Carl, I think, is a pretty good henchman, and that boosts it up. But also, I consider Johnson and Johnson of the FBI to be almost like villains because they're just like, 20, 25% casualties. I can live with that. Like, so they're almost bad guys in a sense. So that's
It
why
was
I
so
scored it that
80s.
way. Yeah.
The people there looked so 80s. What we viewed everyone to look like in the 80s, even the bad guys, how they look like some of the characters in Spies Like Us, from back then. Just almost exactly the same look. It's kind of funny looking back our view of foreign people. how they're all looking alike. That's kind of funny. Same style, same everything.
Yeah. That's one of the things I meant to mention when we were talking about badass babes was Holly. And I don't know if it's because I'm getting older now. Like when I was younger, I didn't find her character that attractive, but I'm like the same age as she would have been when filming it. I was like, man, the actress, she's actually Macaulay Culkin's aunt. Her maiden name was Culkin. But I'm like, man, she's pretty hot. And like, I don't know if it's because she is, rocking the open shirt or whatnot. But even the '80s perm was doing it for me. But like, it was very '80s cocaine, perms. Like everyone's wearing a suit at the
Shoulder
party.
pads.
Yeah,
Rolex.
yeah. It's just a very '80s film. Which we like. That's what this channel's about for now. All right, so moving on to some of the others, we'll probably get through these ones pretty quickly. I know Kung Fu, hand-to-hand combat. I gave it a 7. Or wait, no, I'm sorry. I gave it a yeah, I gave it a 7. Wasn't anything extravagant, but it was brutal and gritty. There were some good fights. I could probably up it up to an 8, I'd say. I'm personally, yeah, I'm gonna up it to an 8 because it just a brutal aspect of it. It wasn't a martial arts film, so it's not going to be a 10. It wasn't John Wick. But yeah, so that's what I went with. How about you guys? Would you think?
Well, I went with an 8 as well. And the reason I like it is because it's gritty, it's dirty, like there's no real rules or form. It's like street fighting. And I thought it was pretty well choreographed for street fighting.
Yeah, I agree. How about you, Rob? What'd you think?
I I gave it a 7. Uh, I thought it was good because there's a decent amount of blood when fighting, like in the end, the final scene. Like there's a lot of blood in it. A lot of the fighting was good, but the initial scene, whenever I saw this type of category to rate it, uh, the initial fight where he comes in and he has the gun to the head of the other guy, the one of the bad guys. They don't know he exists. And here they come in, he puts the gun. He's like, "You won't kill me because you're a cop," you know? It's pretty much saying I don't have to follow rules, but you do. He didn't just shoot him, just showing his character, you know? But he tried to hit him in the side, and then ensues the first fight. That I really wish it was more John Wick at that moment, you know, at least hit him with the weapon. He just kind of hit him in the
Yeah.
side, with the side of his fist. So it wasn't the John Wick, it wasn't the Matrix Kung Fu scene. That would have been pretty cool. So I gave it a 7. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't stellar.
Yeah, it wasn't the main focus. How about you, Benz? You went lowest on this. I think you gave it a 6.
Yeah, this will start to go into a main topic. Die Hard, I found was a lot of comic. I would consider this a action comedy movie. Internet does not define it as a comedy, but I certainly is. And to your point about having the gun to the guy's head, there's 2 instances in this movie where people have guns to their head and they somehow get out of it. And in that exact situation, John has a gun to the bad guy's head. He gets out of it. They have a tussle for a few minutes, and then he throws them down the stairs and kills them anyway. So some of the hand-to-hand combat, I'm at a 6, especially for this time frame, because that's the time he had movies coming out with Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, Rocky. You had some really good hand-to-hand kung fu movie. I believe Kill Bill might have been '90s, but I think of Kill Bill, a lot of kung fu. As far as kung fu, I didn't see much in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it
Ninja
doesn't have to
movies
be
were really
just kung
big.
fu for it, but yeah. Well, Jackie Chan was big in the '80s too, before he got to the US. So that's why, like, yeah, the category is kung fu, but it's hand-to-hand combat. But yeah, I think overall it's gritty, but it's not over the top. Guns, lots of guns. We're all 9s and 10s here. Just to save time, I think we can all agree, like, great gun action. It's not John Wick,
I did
but
want to bring up a point about the gun. Why is the cop shooting the assault rifle like this?
good point. Yeah, that should not that I did put it as a 9. Maybe that's why.
It's
Yeah,
not an
any
80s
mark that
movie. It's not an 80s movie if it doesn't have a hip fire.
Yeah, that's
that's
true.
true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, no Merc would hold low like that. I mean, uh, a Delta operator, they could shoot holding it low, full sprint, and get a headshot. No kidding. aside. They could do that. Only I think Delta operators can do that. These mercs here doing that, it was driving me crazy. And then to hold the gun, swinging it, picking it up, always standing with their legs. But it was the '80s style,
Yeah.
that's Charlie Sheen in Commando or whatever it was back then. Yeah, that's
Oh,
ugh.
th- that
Schwarzenegger
sounds
was Commando. Charlie Sheen was Hot Shots Part
hot
2. We're
shot.
making fun of it. Yeah.
I think it was Delta Force. No, I think the movie Delta Force
Oh,
back
oh
then.
yeah,
Was he
yeah.
in that one?
Navy
I
SEALs.
think it
Navy
was.
SEALs.
There we go. That's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah. How he
Chuck
would just
Norris was
jump out
Delta
and
Force.
sweep. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Trying to remember back then, but that's kind of how it was back then. Holding it. I used to think as a kid, all I got to do is just hold a gun and fire it down range and totally hit my target and throw grenades that would blow up entire street blocks. But this kind of showed it's kind of fun to watch back then, but also it kind of makes you think, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? I guess we just didn't have the internet to watch people actually shoot real world, or a lot of people didn't have weapons to shoot in the real world. So you believe this back then, it's
Yeah.
great, still great, but I'm just saying it's fun to look back.
It's going to be great when we get to Commando. Ben's, one of the things you mentioned, like speaking of shooting, like I did complain about this early on. He is kind of a cop early on. And I'm like, why doesn't John just shoot guys? He yells freeze at the one guy. Um, I think he was probably supposed to be Italian. And he like gets on top of the table and he's shooting down at John. And he taunts him, next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate. And McClane's like, thanks for the advice, and just blows him away. In that scene, Bruce Willis actually ended up having, I think it was 2/3 hearing loss in his, I believe, left ear because because they were using blanks that were even louder. Like they used specialized blanks to really get the more, like percussion out of the gun from sound and muzzle flash and such. So they had plexiglass to surround for safety. And then he's under a table, and it actually caused it to reverberate and cause hearing damage. So Bruce Willis
Interesting. I
actually
bet
took some.
without a
Go
blank
ahead.
adapter on the end of that rifle, I bet you there probably wasn't enough gas to get back on those firing those machine guns so fast. I bet you they probably had to put more gunpowder in these blanks just to create enough gas to push the spring back and the buffer spring in order to drive the bolt back and forward quickly. I
Mm.
wonder if that's why it was so loud. Or I
Yeah, I'm
guess
not
not. You
sure.
could use a weaker buffer spring probably to still get the same effect. Uh, just
Yeah,
thinking.
they probably just wanted the extra muzzle flash.
Yeah, and
That makes
sound was
sense.
the other big thing, at least according to IMDb trivia. So I'm not sure. All right, so moving on to elegant weapons for a more civilized age category, basically melee weapons. This is knives, swords. Let's be honest, there's no knives or swords in this movie. But so we all rated it pretty low, other than Casey again. Casey and I disagreed on this one. But for me, personally, I gave it a 3 because I decided he uses walls. He hits somebody with the butt of a gun at the end of the movie, and he kills a dude with a staircase. So stairs are now a melee weapon. But yeah, basically this is for weapons in your hands, sort of thing that don't shoot. So yeah, I gave it a 3. We'll go with the guys that are in agreement with me on this one first. So Benz, you had it as a 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, you had it as a 2, and Rob, you had it as a 3. So what were your guys'
More
reasoning?
guns movie, not knives. I'm quite curious to see where Casey got his rating from.
Yeah, we're probably
Should
all
I
the
just go
same.
ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Casey.
I don't know where I got the 10. I might have done that mistakenly, but
Oh,
like,
would you rescore it then?
yeah, I'd drop it down to like a 3 or a 4.
Okay.
So I'll just
So
go with the
we'll
high
go
end because I can be different. Go with 4.
4. Okay. Yeah, you had an 8 before. So all right, we're dropping it down to a 4. So we're all in agreement there. It just doesn't exist. It's not that it wouldn't be good if it did. It's not there. Um, but he does use some of his environment, so we gave him some points. From that, we move on to chases. For chases, It's basically, I called it at one point the Tom Cruise category. Is a guy on the run at any point? Are there car chases? Excluding the ridiculous one in the last Die Hard movie that was horrible. I mean, the movie is like the worst movie I've ever seen, where they like wreck half of Moscow, like that sort of chase, cars, planes, things like that. For if we talk Star Wars, trench run, but basically is a character on the run chasing someone or being chased. And I'd say for this movie, you can look at it one of two ways. You can say, no, there's no real chases in it, so it scores low. Or you can say the entire movie is a chase because he's on the run at times from him. And I think that's the route that Casey went with this. And Ben's, you also scored it fairly high as well. So Ben's, you had it as a 7. Let's start with you.
It was your exact second point. I saw the whole movie as a chase. As soon as 20 minutes in, the next hour and 40 minutes is hide and go seek almost. He's crawling in the vent. He's tying a rope to a gun and going down the elevator shaft. It's a whole game of hide and go seek. And that's why I rated it. Of course, you even have some helicopters coming in, which that's not as much a part of the chase, but it's a cool scene seeing them fly through the FBI agents in the helicopter with their snipers, the Johnson and Johnson.
Not the baby powder.
Yeah. or the oil. Die Hard is not a Diddy party. Don't they make baby oil? Johnson and Johnson baby oil? Go ahead, Casey. You were a 10.
So yeah, I gave it a 10 because the whole movie is a chase. And not only are they trying to find him and they're chasing him around, he's chasing them as well. And so like that's the whole movie is a chase. I liked it. I gave it a 10.
Rob, we were on the lower end. What was your reasoning?
I saw it as a slow hunt, you know, two people hunting slowly, methodically. Sure, he ran some, but they were still just trying to reposition. The whole movie is just a slow hunt of repositioning to try to get the other person. So I didn't really see it. The way I saw it just wasn't a chase. It was just a hunt. You don't go out and hunt deer, from on your feet running with the spear. You'd throw a spear. You'd from kind of almost a fixed position try to kill the other person, but then change your position and then again fix it and try to kill the person. So I saw it just as a hunt, not a chase.
If you think about it from like a realism standpoint, I guess they were focused on their mission of trying to get the money, but he's contained to like 3 levels. Just send every bad guy after him at once. Like that's one way you could do it. But then that would be more of a sequel type film, where you have one guy killing like 80 people. But in this one, they kept it as a under 20 body count,
Yeah, they did
which
not
we'll
have a
get
lot
to
of
that in a second.
Overwatch. Usually you'd have some Overwatch. One person would fix their position and clear, a section while the other person
Yeah.
moves, and then they get to a new fixed position, and then this person moves. If it was like, real teamwork on the bad guy's part. Instead, they were kind of meandering around, kind of on the roam, not at the ready, looking for him. Yeah.
I agree with
And
that.
they always take the elevator. I just realized that. The bad guys always take the elevator so he knows when they're there. Ding! And he's like, oh, nobody ever
Over
takes the
here.
staircase. John McClane's the only guy to use a staircase in that movie, it seems like, other than the final one to the rooftop where there's no elevator. Let's tie that
Good
into
note
our
with the
next
villain.
category. What was that?
Good note. Good note with the villain I had was the main henchman of Hans was this Arnold Schwarzenegger looking dude. Big guy who looked just like Arnold. He does
Carl?
nothing in the whole movie.
Oh,
Nothing.
which one are you talking about?
Exactly. You don't even know who I'm talking about. He's just the guy who looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He doesn't get in any conflict. John shoots him at the end, but otherwise,
Oh, the security guy.
He just stands next to Hans the whole time.
Yeah, you're talking the guy that he was down at the front desk. So he was the one running the
Okay,
front desk. That's who that was. Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah. He didn't do too much. Okay, but okay,
No, he
that
just,
was the main side guy at the end. They just needed to take care of him.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought your
So
points were very good about the chase. So I'm actually going to lower my score because I agree with Rob that it was a slow hunt. So I was going to lower my score from a 7 to a 6.
Did we
okay.
just become best friends? Yep.
You and Rob are like, we must rely on everything.
We must align.
Um, all right, so I started to get into it a little bit there. Mayhem in body count. So our explosions, destruction, and as for mentioned, body count. We are all scoring this pretty high. Our lowest score was Rob at a 7, which Ziggy, which I'll talk about Ziggy scoring later, also agreed with you.
It's they came with a fixed number of personnel, small, so it never had the opportunity as bad guys to be killing a lot of. So they went in with a specific number, probably two teams, three teams at most. So there was always going to be that limit there, and it was kind of slow. The killing and fighting, like the fights, the scenes between McClane and the bad guys are kind of extended, so you feel like there's going to be a lot of people killed because a lot of the movie is all uh like trying to kill each other is happening the whole time. So it feels like there's going to be a lot of people. I wanted this to be big, and I almost scored it a 10, and then I thought about it, and I was like, there's just not enough people to kill just by nature of it being two or three small teams of mercs.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like it's a high body count for one guy, but it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger taking on an entire island in like Latin America where he kills like every soldier on the island running through the middle of them firing at him, but we'll talk about that movie another day. So yeah, the body count is low, but I ended up scoring it an 8, so a little higher than you because the explosions are amazing in it. Do you guys know why the explosions were so amazing in that film and why they look so good?
Propane was cheap, maybe. Propane, nice and cheap price. I don't.
So the building, Nakatomi Tower, is actually like Fox's headquarters. So they owned the building. So they were able to do an actual like large amounts of destruction there because they owned the building and it wasn't quite done yet, I guess. So a lot of those explosions, the reason they look so real is because they are. Like they actually did like
Wow.
controlled explosions, I guess. Um and I guess I haven't this is from IMDb. I haven't like gone and done my historian duty of looking into it more in depth. But I guess they even found shell casings from the blanks. And Reagan, President Reagan, like rented out like the top floor or something for some event. And Secret Service was like freaked out because they found these empty shell casings, and then they realized it was blanks from when they filmed Die Hard. But I guess they had to like there would be people working, so they had to start filming after hours because people would be complaining about like the loud noise while they're trying to work in their offices and they're shooting shootouts. Um, so yeah, I think the explosions for me caused it to jump up to an 8, but the body count was limited by numbers. How about you, Benson Casey? Either one of you guys, what'd you think? Casey, I'll have you go.
All right, I'll go. If I'm tracking on my sheet the same, I gave it a 10. Um, the body count wasn't spectacular. I think the kills were well written as far as like how they happen. It's not cookie cutter. Everybody gets shot and blows over, flies over backwards. They're all have a uniqueness to them, and the special effects I think were good. Like Ed said, more realistic explosions, a little over the top, but um, better than most 80s movies. But just the mayhem and the destruction of the place just kind of what am I trying to say here? It's all the destruction and mayhem that he causes that made me give it a 10.
Well, yeah, even like the police car, like Al's police car just gets like rammed, body falls on it, and then they're like launching, or shooting machine gun fire. Oh, and the helicopters too.
Yeah.
They blow up helicopters. They blow up is the one guy, the guy that's breaking into the vault. He calls it. He's like, oh, the FBI is sending in their RV. And so, that gets like blown up. And then, and how's John respond to that? Drop C4 into the elevator shaft or ventilation shaft, whichever it was. How about you, Benz?
Yeah, all great points. And the one thing I'd add with the destruction of the building is the scene where John's under the table hiding, and Hans says, "Light up the glass," because he sees John doesn't have shoes on. So they just shoot and destroy all the glass and just complete destruction.
Yeah, that the glass scene's cool. Like it's man, it's really a good movie. Like when you talk about it, like you really realize how good it is. Um,
I think
so
Casey's point was really good on the every death was unique
yeah.
to the bad guys. I think that really made it feel drawn out, like there was a lot of death there, just because every death that occurred was pretty unique. It lasted a little bit. Really good
Yeah, you don't
point.
really get a lot of like just five guys running and hip fire and five guys drop. You don't really get a lot of that in it. Like everyone has their the one guy he had like the Fu Manchu, the Asian guy in the long hair who like he ad-libbed he asked for permission, but he ad-libbed grabbing the candy bar. Like, but he has kind of a quick death. I guess apparently he was going to die quicker originally. But he asked for that, and it's like, yeah, you just bought your character some more time because they like that. And so he's like, hey, can I? He didn't want to steal food from the set, and they gave him permission. But it's like a memorable scene, like kind of like, oh, I kind of like this bad guy. He's grabbing a crunch bar. But I think he just gets like popped running up the stairs or something like that. Like he opens the
That was
door, and John's just
comedic.
like, yeah,
That was funny. I wrote that down for more evidence about it being funny. As he's just running by, like grabs the crunch bar from the stand.
yeah. It's like it's got a lot of human elements to it. I think that's why people like Die Hard is it's not and that's the other reason, like going back to the whole alpha thing at the very beginning, why I gave John McClane a 10 is he's not superhuman. Like Arnold and Rambo or Sly at this point are like superhuman, or steroided up and such. So now we'll move into like moving on to try and hurry up here a bit. We'll move into less of the important categories of weight, but still things that guys look for in movies. So I make this look good. The wardrobe of the primary characters and just the overall film. I rated this a 4. I could see it going higher or lower. I rated it lower because McClane. Actually, I'm going to bump it up to a 5. My reason being the evolution of the tank top. It evolves with McClane's character, so I think you gotta, give it some bonus for that. And then the other thing was the discussion on the suits when Hans is talking to Takagi, about the suits. Oh, you bought it from so and so in London. I have 3 of them. It's very like elitist or 2 or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, Rob, go ahead. What were your thoughts on wardrobe?
I gave it a 2. I feel bad. There, it wasn't the Matrix, when to nerd out a little bit, movies like that's really cool. The outfits, or John Wick. I don't know why I'm using those two right now, but there, his
Oh,
outfit
John
didn't have
Wick's
an
like the
elegance to it.
best.
Yeah, well, Matrix is, but John Wick is right under it because he's definitely dressed pretty
The
sharp.
the turtleneck with the suit, I love that vibe when he rocks that. Anyway, sorry,
Uh,
go ahead.
this here, there wasn't a whole lot put into it. It was a lot of, I don't know, a lot of 80s clothes. You had the guy with,
Head and
who was all about
shoulders.
his Rolex again. Yeah. I think I think his wife had shoulder pads, didn't she? I don't recall.
Probably.
I think she may have had, I don't know. I just didn't get a good like they're very sharp dressed for the time. There may have been one or two people who were sharp dressed. I didn't even like the the person who runs the building there, the Nakatomi Plaza, the boss. I didn't like
Yeah.
his suits that much. They were talking about him. Maybe that was really cool at the time back then. I don't know, but I don't know. There wasn't a lot of sharp dressed people uh, with the characters or even the extras. So
It
I'm
was very
sorry.
80s.
Very 80s. Yeah, I guess I'm falling victim in my rating scheme. I gave it a 2 on there.
I started out really low too, and then I kind of boosted it up just because I enjoyed the movie, I think. How about you, Benz? What would you think on it?
Yeah, similar to Rob, I think he hit great points. Just wasn't you saw the suits from the businessman at the Christmas party. The police officers were wearing police codes. Villains were kind of dressed nothing. I mean, I could barely remember what they were wearing, to be frank with you. So that's why it's a 3. I can't even remember really what they were wearing.
How about
It
you,
doesn't
Case?
stick out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, it's not memorable. I agree. The tank top, the torn up wife beater is the most iconic. It is iconic though. It's in the Smithsonian. So go ahead, Case.
I gave it a 6 out of 10 because it just seems average to me. You got the great things of like the tank top and the 80s fashion, but then you also have like the European style dress of the some of the henchmen. It's a little bit cheesy. The cheese is mostly why I gave it the 6, but I felt it was just pretty average.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement there that it wasn't that great. You and I went a little higher, but we're all kind of saying the same things. It's just a matter of scoring there.
You make
Q
a good
Branch.
point
Oh, sorry.
about the
Go ahead.
tank top. You make a good point about the tank top. I didn't quite realize how iconic that was, but that's a good point. That tank top does count. So I would increase my score up to from a 3 to a 5 actually, just because of the tank top. I didn't think about that.
I
Yeah,
wonder
it's
if
hard.
memes
Like,
kind of drove that.
yeah,
I wonder if the memes, because you'll see him in the shaft with the shirt on all the time.
yeah.
I
That's
wonder if
right.
the memes really drove that.
I,
Less about
And
the clothes and more about the memes.
it's funny because I'm usually pretty like Casey always gives me crap for like wanting to dress nice and stuff. I mean, I'm in a t-shirt now, but um, like so I thought I was gonna score it really low, but I just felt it fit the aesthetic of the film and what was going on. So that's why I scored it. Like it's not John Wick. I mean, I think John Wick or James Bond or anything like that, like the style in those is like 10. But it just
That's
it felt the fit the vibe. Go ahead.
my scoring scheme, our scheme, sorry, was based on every category. What is the best movie in that category? And
Hmm.
then I try to place this person who does that category where he's at relative to the best of whatever movie it is for that category I could think of. And that's probably why my scores are so low, is because I'm always comparing every category to the best that category can be in a movie. And then where is this person at? That's probably why mine are so low on there. I don't know.
That's how I originally started doing it. And then I'm like, but I heard scoring too low. Like, and I'm like, maybe I'll look at it as an individual film because it's from a different era too. So maybe we can do a video on that at some point for the channel of where we say this is our epitome of what a 10 out of 10 is for this category. I think that'd be a cool video to do. Or maybe even break it down like in the 80s. This is the epitome of like the best wardrobe in the 80s or whatnot. Gosh, at least it's not Roger Moore's James Bond's style. Safari suits and all right, let's move on to stunts and effects. Or no, I'm sorry, Q Branch in the Armory. The use of technology, weaponry, and items for help. Did I just do like a Trump the weave? I weaved that to Q Branch, threw in the James Bond reference. Now we're on Q Branch. So let's see. I've got a 6 out of 10 for Q Branch in the Armory because we have the amazing items of packing tape, fire hose, and Rolexes. that don't shoot lasers. So that's why I went with that. The packing tape, using packing tape as a way to defeat the villain was awesome. Fire hose to jump down, or even using the I don't know, was it MP5 or whatnot, to hang down to try and get to the other air shaft, ventilation shaft. I'm just picturing Neomoidians now, like when Wick falls, he's gone at the ventilation shaft from episode 1, Star Wars. So yeah, anyway, Benz, what'd you think of the Q branch?
I thought the best use of technology was when they're trying to break into the vault. You had the guy doing the
Ah,
different
yeah.
keys, and that was his main goal, was to be the tech guy. He was kind of tech, made some jokes. He made a joke like, you don't have me around for my personality. When Hans asked, oh, can you break this lock? You don't have me around for my personality. And so that was the main demonstration of technology from what I saw. Stuff like C4, Black Hawk helicopters, big machine guns in the 80s. Those are newer things at that time. Seeing a Black Hawk fly through the city streets like that in the 80s would be pretty cool.
Well, Rob, we're gonna go to you on this one as our Blackhawk expert.
Well, they do fly. You could see once a year, usually down in Miami. There's exercises that go on down there. You could see Black Hawks flying through the city and right on the over the water, and you can watch the exercise take place. Um, I got the technology on here. I'm not sure if that was like a tow missile or what that they used to shoot that armored vehicle with.
I think it
I
was an anti-air missile that they used to shoot the ground.
It could. I didn't see a battery, like a big battery pack on there, which would be what that would need to be used as like a surface to air. You need a cooling pack. But so I'm thinking maybe it was a tow missile because there could be a joystick on it or something. And tow missiles usually have a wire, thin wire that flies them.
Yeah.
Uh, and he was looking through it for a while. So I don't know if that was a surface to air missile, but I gave it a 5 just because it had that in it. So I scored this one probably a little higher, I'm guessing maybe. Well, pretty close to the same actually. Okay, cool.
Also, you have the touch screen TV computer thing when John gets there and he has to type in her name and that's how he
Oh,
finds
that's
out.
true.
Like that was some advanced technology and like the locking, the whole building can lock down. That was pretty advanced. How
If
about
he
you,
has
Casey?
a
Do you
cell
have
phone,
oh
if he has a cell phone, and this is one of those movies that new technology kind of messes with the whole plot. If he has a cell phone, that movie goes pretty different because the first 45 minutes was a big deal. He didn't have a phone, and so he couldn't talk to anyone.
although
That
Argyle
could be
did have
really
a
easy
mobile
though.
phone, a car phone.
But you could
Oh,
jam radios pretty
yeah.
easily now. I think because we're so reliant that I wonder how you would communicate if there's any hardline phones nowadays. You can jam the signal really, really easy to jam the signals if people are only using cell phones in there. So, I mean, you may not have even gotten the radio call out. If they had cell phones, then that would have been a tactic then to jam. And you probably would have then jammed the walkie-talkie that originally got the police there, maybe.
Good point.
They weren't
Yeah,
using secure channels either. Go ahead, Case.
I gave it a 7 out of 10. Mostly because like the radios they used, not your box standard firearms like the Steyr AUG. Um, I don't know what Hans Gruber's handgun was, but I liked it for a little compact. Um, you've got all the technology with them breaking into the vault and the computer stuff and locking down the building. I thought the technology was decent, maybe a little above average in my opinion.
Carl's all gun was pretty cool. I like that.
Those
The gun you
monitors were
mentioned.
color monitors.
Oh, that's a good point.
Just
Yeah.
just think back then, they didn't have they weren't like 11 different shades of green. When he's breaking in the vault, you could see there was colors on those monitors for the time. That's kind of impressive for 80s.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah, they had some good technology. It wasn't necessarily used by him, he's using fire hose
Yeah.
but I guess that goes along with I guess that's one of the things like we're seeing the difference of his character. He's a gritty New York cop or detective or whatnot, and he's using fire hose uh, throwing chairs out windows, and they're there in their Euro suits and all the rich business people and such, and they're like super tech. And John McClane's a man of the people. He's like the blue collar guy that's in this like encased in this or trapped in this like super high tech rich people building. And I think that's another reason people like it is it kind of goes off that vibe. Like you got the elitist people, and John McClane is the like the blue collar cop in this building. And at the beginning, you see some of that with Ellis, and he's like, "You should see the watch I got her. It's a Rolex." Which, yeah, that's the point I wanted to make here. When we get to the that technology of the Rolex, that will go into like memorable kills. So we'll save the Rolex for a little bit, and for now, we'll move on to stunts and effects. Most of us went high here, nines and tens. Other than for once, Casey, you went with a seven. You were our lowest on that one.
I think they were good. There just wasn't yeah, I could probably bump it up to an 8. I wouldn't really go much more than that though.
So, all right, eight. I think we're probably all to save time here. It's gritty. There's a lot of explosions. Go ahead, Benz.
Where he ties the rope around the gun and he goes down the elevator shaft. I haven't seen that in another movie before. So that
Yeah, that
was
was good.
very unique scene.
I think the other thing I like with them being able to film it in their own building, there's only one scene in the entire movie that doesn't look real, and that's when Hans is falling. You can tell that they did like a backdrop, painted it in, or whatever technology they used at the time. It might have been green screen or blue screen. But the other thing though with that is you do have all those government like bonds floating through the air in that. So it takes you back to that realism aspect of it too. So like at first when he's first falling for like 2 seconds, it doesn't look that great, but it doesn't look horrible either. So that's why I scored it high. I went with a nine. Plus the stunts, they're not Jackie Chan, but they look good. Um, and then Benz you had as a 10. And Rob, you had as a 10 as well. So we're all pretty high on that. Anyone else have anything to add to that? All right, we'll move on then to our one category. Everyone scored the same, no brainer. Perfect tens for quotability, one-liners, and comic relief. So we don't even need to ask why. Just what's everybody's favorite quote? Ben's, what was your favorite quote in the movie?
My favorite quote was when John calls 911 and he says, "No fucking shit, lady. Does it sound like I'm ordering a pizza?"
That's my favorite too. How about you, Rob?
Just going around at the time, I remember people always saying "yippee-ki-yay" MFers.
Yeah.
So that was just in the South, people used it all the time. I don't know why, but it really stuck down south.
So my favorite was after he shoots the guy through the table, he goes, "Thanks for the advice."
Yeah.
The most like 80s iconic one-liner in the movie, I think.
Yeah, that was the one I mentioned earlier with him. Like next time you have a chance to shoot somebody, and thanks for the advice. Yeah, it kills them. That was great. I mean, there's just great ones. My favorite is the pizza lady one. Or yeah, does it sound like do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza? But there's also I had a lot in here. Um, who said we were terrorists? Well, like that's like a class thing because they're not actually terrorists. Originally, it was going to be terrorists, but they decided to make them bank robbers. I believe you. I read an article in Forbes. Like just there's so many good lines in it. So he won't be joining us for the rest of his life when Hans Gruber says that after killing Takagi. Who's driving this car, Stevie Wonder, when he's looking at Al driving up. Um, Welcome to the party, pal. Yippee-ki-yay, obviously. You macho assholes. No, no, he's yelling at the when the FBI sends in the team. There's just so many good ones. The other one, a-hole. I'm not the one who just got butt effed on national TV, Dwayne. Like, I'm I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson, no relation. Um, just yeah, it's the one-liners in this. We think of those like the main one, Yippee-ki-yay, but there's so many. I'm actually looking for the one. Uh, okay, here it is. Um, when he's in that brutal fight with Carl, when he like hangs Carl and he thinks he kills him, when he hangs him by the chain. Should have heard your brother squeal when I broke his effing neck. Mother effer, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna cook you, and I'm gonna eat you. He's like, you can't really hear it real well, but he's like yelling this as he's in this fight, and it just adds that element of brutalism. And yeah, just it's got great lines in it. And they're not cheesy like, like a lot of Arnold's where they're just thrown in there as a one-liner. They're I don't know, I think they hit better.
That
You,
was a
you
good
disagree, Rob?
scene where the guy is hung by the chain because a few moments later, when the hostages are leaving the building, they go down the staircase past the guy hanging.
Yeah.
So they start to see some of the destruction. One other one liner I had was when the reporter was at John and Holly's house talking to the help. And he's, let us in or we are calling IIS.
Yeah. He threatens to call immigration on her. Yeah. Um, gosh, that I think that reporter qualifies as scum and villainy. He is the worst. And I think he's in what, the second one as well.
I didn't really understand his purpose in the movie. A little hazy in my head. I mean,
It was to give the Hans Gruber the information to take her.
Yeah.
Whenever he saw the kids on there, they lifted up the frame. He like put it together. Uh, that was the purpose of that reporter, was to finally inform the bad guy that there's a relationship that he can now use as hostage.
and I didn't love
Yeah.
that. I didn't love that that was his only purpose. It was like they later on when they were filming the movie, they're like, wait a minute, how are we going to make it so Hans figures this out? Okay, throw in a news anchor, throw in a reporter. We got to figure this out.
I love taking a shot at the media and fake news and all that. Like it fits so well with like how we think of media today. Like this was like one of the first times we see media viewed in this like negative light. I kind of like that vibe of it.
He is
All
the
right,
best
moving.
scum and villain, I think. That reporter's just very scummy
Yeah.
because of what he's willing to trade is not of course bad guys are not moral also, but this is like a whole different level of gummy morality to achieve a slightly higher status. Like a bad guy, he'll achieve a much higher status if he's successful. This guy will only get a tiny bit of higher status for the what he's willing to risk, which is the people in Nakatomi Plaza. Very scummy.
Yeah. He's just like this weasel of like a human being. Like you think of the term, he's totally that.
He doesn't
Um,
have much screen time. He can't be in the movie for more than 2 minutes. I mean, he is a
oh,
very
well, they do
quick.
have when he's arguing. I think it does take away a bit when he's arguing about wanting to go film it, but I think it's probably better than just throwing him in it. But um, yeah, but he's minor but impactful. Speaking of impactful, epic final showdowns of good and evil. So the final battle. We were all pretty aligned with this at 7 or 8. Benz and Casey, you guys went 8. Rob and I went 7. I think we can all probably agree that um, it's not really an epic final fight between Hans. So the moment is epic, and I think we'll save that for when we get to epic moments. But the fight itself, it's literally just boom, boom, and then releasing the watch. So it's not like there's this massive brawl and they're in this brutal fight. That's more with Carl. But one of you mentioned that the reason you scored it higher is you considered the Carl scene to be the actual epic final battle. I forget who it was, if it was Benz or Casey.
It was me.
Okay, yeah. So you want to make your argument on that because I disagree. I think it's Hans and John, but go ahead and make your argument on that because it was an interesting take.
So it's almost like there's two different final battles. You've got the one that's actual physical and a struggle for him to overcome Carl and kill him. And then you have the
Oh wait,
second
wait.
one, which is
Oh,
more a game of like wit.
we lost you for a sec. Are you there still?
Did I cut
Did you
out?
guys lose them? Okay, now you're
No, I
back.
hear. I
Yeah.
hear.
Okay, you're back. I lost you for a
I'm
sec.
here.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So you got the main, uh, sort of like the physical one that's a struggle for John in taking out Carl. And so that
Oh,
kind of
you
speaks for
you
itself.
mean
And then you have a
Hans?
secondary one.
Do you mean Hans?
No, Carl.
Oh, okay.
When
Go.
he hangs the dude with the chain.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so that's the
I see what you're
physical
saying.
one. And then you have a battle of wits and smarts basically with the actual Hans one.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Hmm.
Um, you made me think of something though. I thought you were going a different direction of that. We have Al Powell's battle of getting over the fact he killed that kid. And when Carl walks out of the building, I mean, you look down and it's Al having taken out Carl. He saves the day. Like, so I thought that's the direction you were going with that. Like, you're maybe going to consider that the final battle of Carl. Because I thought, isn't that what you had said when you talked to me, or was
I
it
don't
different?
remember.
Okay, yeah,
We
because
went back and forth and stuff a little bit.
I think he's saying his story arc. Yeah, he closed the story arc out on that one,
yeah,
I believe
with
he said.
Carl.
And yeah, with Carl.
Yeah, with Al Powell, he's gone from this guy picking up Twinkies for his pregnant wife that went this route because of um, killing that kid on accident to he saves the day, he saves John McClane, and he's now won this internal battle with himself, and he's used his gun to save lives and make up for it. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic. So I thought that's the route you're going. So, but yeah, for me it's Hans versus John as the actual main final battle. But the rethinking of it now, I do like that you have also Al. Like there's psychology in here. You have Al being there for John to help him through it, and then you have John being there to help Al through his like PTSD. Go ahead, Benz.
So there's a few battles, as you're saying. I don't know if there's quite a final battle because when I think of
Yeah,
the 10 out of 10 is Anakin versus Obi-Wan episode 3.
yeah,
That's
that's
a
me too. Yeah.
peak final 15-20 minute battle. Whereas you said this was kind of three quick obstacles almost.
Yeah, and for the record, if anyone out there notices, Rob's at my house. That's my Star Wars stuff back there. I don't know if you're a Star Wars nerd or not, Rob. No. So,
I'm Star
but
Trek, so
I
I
like Star Trek too, so I like them both. Did you have anything else to add on that? Anyone else are ready for the next? Uh,
Nope.
all right, so let's move on to soundtrack and score. Um, we were all 6 and 7, other than Rob. You went with a 4. Rob, you're our elder statesman here. So you grew up with where soundtracks were really part of the movie, probably. So go ahead and tell us why you scored it lower.
there just wasn't any real soundtrack. The You got the cheesy 80s in the limo music, but outside of that,
Run DMC.
there wasn't really any major score though. The nothing that I would recognize. Kind of reminds me of like even Short Circuit had like a main song that was cool that everybody knew at the time. This one there wasn't really that I recall any real good music. No,
Anyone
nothing
wanna
composed.
Well, they took like classic Christmas songs and they changed them into minor keys and used them at moments. That's what I liked about it. That's why I gave it a 7.
I didn't think of that.
Beethoven.
That's actually right. Dang.
They use
Yeah.
Beethoven when the vault opens up. They play Ode to Joy. And like it's a classic moment. And it goes like slow-mo and it plays Ode to Joy. I think that for me boosted it. And then like the Christmas songs, especially having rap in the movie, like a Christmas rap song by Run DMC at the beginning. Benz, how about you?
Yeah, it didn't really have its own song like you think of a movie like Beverly Hills Cop. When you hear the name of the
Yeah.
movie, you hear the song. You just
Yeah.
you don't have that with this movie. I don't remember too much of it, but it wasn't bad music, as you said. There wasn't times when I was like, "Oh my goodness, more annoying music, just turn it off." But nothing too memorable. So that's why I rated it a 6 out of 10.
The
I'd
Christmas music's a
probably,
good point. That's the whole
yeah.
reason it's a Christmas movie, is
That's
it
why I
takes
scored it a
place
7.
Christmas. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah, I should have.
See, do you want to change score or stick with it?
I could probably go another two higher, I mean, because of
All
that.
right.
So what is that?
We'll bump you to a 6. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I had it like a 5 or 6, and then I'm like, the Ode to Joy scene is really classic, and it's a Christmas movie. That's what I meant to say when we started this out is we won't be discussing whether it's another Christmas or another video on it being a Christmas movie, but ultimately, is it a Christmas movie? I say yeah.
Sure.
I think it's a
Yeah, it takes
movie that takes
place,
place during Christmas. It's not a Christmas movie. A
but
Christmas movie is
it's
Santa Claus, where it's about Christmas and bringing family. Well, they
It's
kind of
about
get go
John McClane and Holly
together.
McClane coming together for Christmas.
what's the final song playing? If I recall, I thought it was a Christmas song
Yeah,
at the
it
very
is.
end. Like it
Oh, the weather
finishes,
outside. Yeah.
yeah, it finishes with Christmas music, and then it takes place during Christmas time frame of somebody coming home for the holidays. Uh, that's always
It's
been the argument.
it's weird not being snow. I know it's a California Christmas, not a Chicago Christmas.
Yeah,
It's
that's what does take away.
mhm. That throws me off a little bit. Most Christmas movies are filmed in Chicago because it's miserable and cold all the time, and it looks like Christmas.
And even the
Yeah.
opening scene with the plane landing, look at
Throw
how
you off.
the warmth.
What was that, Casey? We lost you.
Say it shouldn't throw Ben's off too much.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in warm weather now. Um, Solution. We should rename Die Hard Miracle on 34th Floor instead of 31st Street or 34th Street or whatever. Because I think the movie does take place on like the 30th to 34th floors. So there's a solution.
Never forget what happened in Nakatomi Plaza. Never forget.
Yeah. Um, all right, we got a couple left. Let's see, four here. Directorial style and cinematography. We ranged from let's see, 7 for Ben's up to a 10 for Rob. And Casey and I were at 9s. Ben's, why'd you go lower there? And I'll be back. I gotta stop the dog from barking.
Well, I thought it was fine directed. I rated it a 7 out of 10 because it seemed a little predictable at times, like when Holly puts a picture of the family face down. It seemed a little predictive, like the limo driver just sticking around for a while. He really didn't do much in the movie. He just he's in the beginning and at the end, and you see him in spots in the limo, just kind of partying, clowning around. And I can't say nothing happened in this movie that you didn't expect. I mean, there wasn't anyone who died who was really good. The guy who was on drugs, who was doing cocaine in Holly's office, him dying wasn't a surprise. The way he was acting, you could tell he was an easy character to dislike and get rid of. Uh, the the Japanese boss getting killed, kind of predictable, which is a point I'm going to bring up. It is funny you have was this, I believe, West Germany, was where these guys were West German, and we say
Yeah.
West and East German because at the time of the movie the Berlin Wall was in place, and so it's like you have West Germans stealing money from a Japanese company in America. So I don't know how America got in the middle of this, but
And
Never thought
the
about it.
one guy that he kills on the table is, I believe, Italian. So it's basically World War II, part two. The America, yeah, except for America and Japan are aligned. who else? Direct. You had it as a 10, Rob.
I thought it was great. The cinematography, the filming of it all, the angles at which things were shot, the amount of glass, how much light reflected off the glass really showed that it was there. Um, I don't know. I thought the filming of it was really good for the time. Um, they held the
Yeah.
scenes long enough. They didn't move on too quickly. There wasn't punch scenes where every time, like WWF, where every time they're getting ready to hit somebody, it changes the angle. So you don't like. It was pretty good in this. They did well, I thought.
Yeah, it wasn't like the Bourne era or Quantum of Solace where like the fights are just cut scenes edited and so you can't actually see like it looks brutal and gritty. It's Ben's, I think you commented on how long the film was when we were talking the other day, but to me it doesn't seem like a long movie. I think it's an hour and like 37 or 137 minutes or something like that. It's over 2 hours, but it to me the pacing of it is phenomenal. Like
it
it's
starts
not
off
slow.
hot. It starts off very, very fast. And then I feel like
Yeah.
about an hour out, you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Let's kind of wrap it up a little bit. And that's
This
why
will
the final battle's so quick, in my opinion, with Han. They're like, okay, we don't need to drag this out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I call it like the movie pacing differences by generation, although technically we're the same generation. Um, I think let's see, Rob, you're what, 70s, right? Late 70s?
78, yeah, 78, baby.
Yeah. So I'm mid 80s, 85. Casey, you're 89, right?
88.
88. Okay, yeah. And then Ben's 95. So that's one of the things I like about this. We'll get some diversity and stuff. And I think as we start to get to some of these movies, we'll see like when we're talking about like how things were directed and pacing and stuff, I think we'll start to see more of that. Um like and for example, westerns don't do well with young audiences now.
Mm.
And so like we'll start to see like a rise in that where like Rob, you and I probably can do a western. Casey, you're probably on the edge of not being able to do a western, I'd say. um but like I think that's one of the things we'll notice like with directing and cinematography style. I think we'll start to see shifts in scoring on that, on movies just based off of like eras people were born. um and then as far as for me with the directorial style and cinematography, I think the classic scene in the air ventilation shaft is just awesome. Also, I just think it's shot really well in general. It's not groundbreaking or iconic as far as like the lighting of John Wick, like to me is just phenomenal. Even the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, the way they lit that really dark, like gives it an aesthetic. Um, there is some lighting elements to this though, like they dimmed the lighting in the film so you could see LA, I guess, through the windows, like in the background. So they did do some stuff with the lighting, but it's nothing that like stands out to me to make it like truly unique, like groundbreaking on a cinematography or directing book. But it's just done really well. So that's why I went with a 9 because it's pretty much perfect. I just didn't see anything that was like a groundbreaking style. Like I don't even know who directed it, is basically what I'm saying. Does anyone know who directed it?
Interesting. I don't remember. It seems like I've read it. Gosh, I don't remember. A quick point though. Good thing it all took place at night. You said this was LA, correct? He was
Yeah.
from New York and they're in LA. that was the time when smog was really bad and you couldn't see. Where I thought it was like the warm filter when a plane was landing. It kind of makes sense now that that was probably smog at the time this was filmed and giving it that look.
True,
It
true.
may not be just filters giving it that look, and
Yeah,
then everything else is at night, so you
yeah,
couldn't see the smog.
that's a good point. Um, the director, John McTiernan, guess what else he directed? Probably the movie we should do next, Predator. So he did Predator and The Hunt for Red October. Um, and he also did Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is to me the best of the Die Hard sequels, which brings back Hans Gruber's brother. Um, all right, so anyone else have anything to say on directorial style or cinematography? I don't know if
When
I heard
the cop has the body fall on his car, that is a great scene.
that is.
That's a very good scene. Also adds to the comic humor that is consistent throughout the movie. It's a very serious scene. How do I get
Yeah.
the attention as the cop's about to drive away and he's going to be stuck by himself? I'm going to throw the body on his car.
Well, it's good that he actually fell into that that um what would you call it? Anyways, where this car falls off into it. It's a good thing because it breaks the line of sight. Otherwise, they'd have kept shooting and killed him. So it's a good thing that his car got reversed and then fell
Oh
down
yeah.
where he's kind of has a bunker, a line of sight protection, so they wouldn't keep killing him or shooting at him. He did have
Good
the
point.
stormtrooper energy there, though, because that was a lot of bullets coming his way, and he himself did not get hit. So good for him.
I was thinking
I,
about that too. Yeah, he doesn't get hit at all. Go ahead, Case.
I love the fact that for continuity, the car stays there the rest of the movie.
I didn't even pick up on that.
That's
That's
a good point.
awesome. It's just like hanging
Yeah,
off the yeah.
just wedged.
Uh yeah, he starts out as such a like weak character. That's why I love Al. And that's why I did rate him as a badass because he's just this, overweight guy eating Twinkies that can't
Because that's a
even go
funny
be a real
scene.
cop.
When
And
the
then at the
guy
end,
falls on
yeah,
him and he's driving backwards, that's funny. He's
yeah.
screaming for his life, and then he runs into something, I think.
He, yeah,
Right.
he's hitting everything in his he really does drive like Stevie Wonder in that scene. Um, all right, so epic kills and iconic moments. Most of us were 10. Rob, you went with a 9. You're a harsh critic.
I guess. I just didn't get I even think that's still a little too high. I didn't get the feeling like, oh, I'm so glad you're dead. That when you really hate a character and they finally die,
Hmm.
he falls off a building. They do a good job shooting him the standard fall. And yeah, the green screen they shot from, they probably had a camera on a rail as he was just suspended with the green screen behind him. They probably ran the camera vertically up to make it look like he was falling away. I just didn't get the great ending. I don't know. It should have
Y-
been more brutal. I just don't feel like it was brutal
Yeah,
enough to a person that I hated enough.
I could dig that. Like I see what you mean there. Do you know why Alan Rickman did such a good job acting in that scene when he's falling and why he's so shocked? They
Is
had
he
him up
scared of
on a
heights?
wire. No, they had him up on a wire. I don't know. I'm assuming it was in a studio. I don't think he was Tom Cruise off the side of a building. They told him they were going to drop him at 3. They dropped him at 2.
Oh,
So he
so
was
they
shocked
actually,
with,
so he went vertical in that. Wow, I thought it was actually the camera that
yeah.
went up. Hmm.
No, yeah, he went vertical. They dropped him at 2, a count of 2 instead of 3. So that's why he's like, yeah. Um, how about you guys? Casey, what did you have on that? You had it.
I had a 10.
Okay, go ahead.
No, uh,
Oh, you just think it's epic?
yeah,
Memorable kills?
yeah. Like I said, they
Ben's?
were all
Oh,
somewhat unique. So
yeah. Oh, like you said earlier, yeah. Every guy, like it's not just random guys getting killed. Every kill in itself is a work of art in a sense. How about
yeah,
you,
they all have,
Ben's? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Case.
I was going to say they all have a purpose for the story in one way or another.
Yeah. Benz?
The, I think that is one of the most iconic deaths is him, the Hans falling after getting his watch taken off is a very iconic death, uh, of him falling off the building like that. And I mentioned it about him having the gun straight up. Those are two very iconic scenes just in movie history that have not really been, or that have been tried to get replicated. I mean, a lot of people try to duplicate that falling type death very frequently. And I think that was a good one.
I think, oh,
It's I can't think of anyone. There's no other movie where the main guy dies by getting his watch taken off. I guarantee
so
it.
the watch is actually Holly's watch, and there's
Yeah.
foreshadowing of this because when John first meets Ellis, like when they walk into Holly's office and Ellis is snorting coke. I don't know if we have to edit that out. I forget. When he's snorting, what they call it in Deadpool, gosh, in the new Deadpool movie, I forgot. Anyway, when he's snorting Christmas snow, because it's a Christmas movie, when Ellis is snorting Christmas snow, John walks in and then Holly comes in and he's like, "Oh, you should see the watch I got her. Show her my watch. It's a Rolex." And like he's trying to brag, like trying to steal away John's wife. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll look at it later." And so John never gets to see the watch because he releases it from Holly's arm. And so it's almost like shortly after that, she says she calls herself Holly McClane. So it's like she's letting go of this, but then they made sequels and they end up not together anyway. But yeah, so originally it's like they're brought back together because she's releasing this watch and so it's like a deeper philosophical meaning behind the watch, I think, in a sense. At least it could be interpreted that way. For me, I put it as a 10. Um, like it's not an epic showdown by all means. That's why I rated the other one lower, but it's got epic moments. The ventilation shaft jumping off the exploding roof by a fire hose. Just got a lot of really classic moments.
What do we
All
got
right.
next?
Sorry, my dog keeps barking. Um, so next we have inspirational factor. Does it amp up your masculinity or motivate you? Like, does it get you hyped up? Everyone had a 10 except for Ben's with a 7.
Uh,
So we'll go with you, Ben's. I gotta go get the dog to shut up again.
okay, yes, and I don't believe I was the only 7. I think my buddy Rob was a 6 as well. Good score, Rob. And I thought it was a 7 because just wasn't too much there. Of course, I gave it a 7, so I mean, there's some inspirational factor, but a lot of unrealism in the movie. Catching the fire hose to himself and jumping off the building, the thing in the fire shaft and the elevator shaft. A lot of unrealism in the movie. You just certainly hope you don't end up in the situation. But you had the limo driver, which was kind of silly. I thought he played a much smaller role in the movie than I expected. I thought the limo driver was going to be a much bigger part, especially he had the only phone. How did that not become a factor? I was shocked that that didn't become a factor. They show him multiple times talking on the phone to women he's trying to date. So it was just kind of the comedic factor. There's so much comedy in it. It's hard for me to go higher than a 7.
Well, sorry, I had to leave. I've got my Alexa programmed to when the dogs bark, play music. Well, if all of a sudden we start getting background noise of Star Wars music playing, we get hit with a copyright infringement. So that's why I have to like keep running away to try and get them to be quiet. Um, so Rob, you went low on it too. What was your reasoning? I had missed
Yeah,
that. I thought you had it as a 10.
I didn't get any real inspirational motivation to go out and shoot East Berliners.
They were
I
West.
don't know that.
Yeah, they're West
Oh, I thought you said they were
Berliners.
East.
What
Wh-
West Germany, West Germany.
Why were
Yeah.
they West German? That's the wrong side of the wall, right?
They're like a terrorist group from West
Yeah, West is
Germany.
ours. Yeah,
Yeah,
West
I
is our
know,
side.
because they
so that
like
was a little odd.
capitalism
Uh,
and
they like money. I like
yeah.
money. No, I just didn't. I don't know. It was a very entertaining movie to watch and a journey to go along with. I just didn't want to go up, pick up a weapon, and go out and crawl through elevator shafts watching it. So uh, yeah, that's all. That's trying to define a negative there. It didn't. It wasn't inspiration. It was just fun to watch.
Yeah,
How
I gave
about
it a
you, Case? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I gave it a 9 because it just like it made me feel like I want to go do like CQB paintball or airsoft or something like that. So like it gave me that feeling that I want to get out and do that, or just go to the range, shoot real guns. That's always fun too. So that's why I gave it a 9.
I gave it a 10 just because when I think of like classic movie characters, I think John McClane is one of the best. And it's like if you're ever in some type of situation like that, like John McClane's like the type of person you'd want to be. Like if to have that resilience to make it through these insurmountable odds. The inspirational factor category, it can be different things for different people. Um, like if you're watching Commando, it's going to be, yeah, I need to hit arms twice today, or Rambo, like, oh yeah, need to get hair transplants so I can wear a red bandana or whatever, like there's going to be something that inspires every person. So I think it's a really personal category for people. And for me, I just, um, seeing like I've talked about a lot, like McLean's vulnerable, but he doesn't give up, and that's one of the things I like about films is when you have your hero, like that ultimate alpha aspect to me is you're in this dire situation where people would quit and you don't quit. So that to me is why I went that way. Everyone's staying pat on that. All right. So now the overall, our final of our main categories, overall film ranking and replayability. All of us went with a 10 except Ben's. You had it as a 7.
I think it's a interesting movie to watch, but it's not one of those movies where I need to go, wow, I missed something. The ending shocked me so much. I have to rewatch it. Whereas I have watched movies where I go, oh my gosh, I have to rewatch the movie because I missed key things throughout it that may have shocked me at the end. And whether you're watching Die Hard 1, 2, 3, or 4, I imagine it's all the same uh, shoot, uh, badass hero fighting villains. So whether you're watching 1 or 2 or 3, I don't think you need to rewatch 1. Uh, but it's still certainly 7 is a good move, is a great ranking. Replayability, we'll watch it again, but certainly not a every year type of watch movie. And because you already know what happens, and that's some of the suspense throughout it, that hurts the replayability a bit, knowing the outcome.
All my other 10s, what are your reasons for disagreeing with Ben's on that?
Since we're the closest to each other, he and I normally, uh, this is something we watch probably once or twice a year, not because we're ready to be impressed by the plot points, but just the fact that it's a fun ride to get buckled up and take it, to watch. So I gave it a 10 because we do watch it once or twice every year. And we always joke about it being a Christmas movie. So if it's still being talked about and still being watched, um, there's something about it, and I think it's just the ride you take whenever you sit down and watch.
Yeah, I mean, I
It,
think it's got legendary status as a movie. So it's something I would watch with my kids, or if I'm just in a mood to watch a movie, it's like, well, I'll watch that because it's got a vibe to it.
it's a generational movie. It is something like you pass down with your kids. My great grandpa and I watched it, and it's one of the films that we both loved. And like Ben's, you mentioned the other ones. Like, yeah, you've got those other sequels, but how many of you right now would go watch two, three, four, or five over the original if you had to choose?
I like two. I like two better. That was
Two.
with Samuel L. Jackson, right? It was part two
Um,
that had Samuel L.
no, that's
Jackson.
three. That's three.
Okay,
Part two is
the
at the
three
airport.
then.
I would argue three might be almost as good. I love three.
Yes. I think
I
adding
think
Samuel L. Jackson in that brings up the comedic part of watching an action comedy. I think that's not slapstick. I think having Samuel L. Jackson in there and him together, brilliant.
I think you can argue Jeremy Irons playing Hans Gruber's brother might be an even better villain. Like he is
I
really
liked how
good.
clever. I hate to talk about
Yeah.
that one. I just liked how clever that writing was in that movie.
Yeah. We'll get to that movie at some point, I hope. Like we'll talk about it. But I would say like plus with the Christmas theme, it's one you can watch every year for Christmas or every other year. Casey, were you going to say something?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. You did mention something though, Casey, with that. You called it a legendary film. And that brings us to our legendary film bonus category. This is where a film gets 20 straight up points if we agree that it's an epic legendary film. Otherwise, it gets no bonus points. Every single one of us considered Die Hard to be a legendary film. So why? What made it so legendary to you guys?
I think it was the recipe, the gumbo of all those things. So I ranked some low because I'm thinking of a movie that what is the best in that category, and I gave it this rank to that. But if you mix it all up and see like those movies that had the best of those categories may had really a lot worse scores in the rest of the categories for those movies that I ranked them. Anyways, I think that the recipe of all this the stuff that we ranked in this movie really made a very good flavored gumbo. It makes a great movie to watch. That gives you that ride, that long, fun ride.
I agree with that.
It's a fun film. Like to me, it's got everything guys look for in a movie. The one thing that I guess you could say is missing is there's not really like a total babe in it. But I don't know. I'm older now. Holly does something for me. It might have been the scotch. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that she's a good woman, and you kind of feel her pain too in the beginning. So she has that emotional interest in making sure that he's taken care of. I think she was a great character in this because it really humanizes the marriage part of the broken marriage or whatever you want to call it.
And I think John's more at fault. He's kind of an asshole. And he even has a scene where he's like, "What are you doing, John?" After he argues with her over the last name, like he couldn't keep his mouth shut. And like it's a very guy thing, and that's why I did almost drop him down a notch from being a 10 because he shows that weakness with his wife, where he just has to be a jerk to her because yeah, but at the same time, when you think of like alpha male, there's kind of a tendency you think of is they can be kind of jerks. So it fits his vibe. Benz, what were you gonna say?
This is where the title of the film is so important. Die Hard. And if it was named something else, I don't know if it would have stuck as well. But the fact it's named Die Hard, it seems to stick. It goes very well with the plot. It indicates that it's going to be killing. Uh, it's going to be pretty hardcore. You're going to see explosions, C4, helicopters. And so I think the naming of the movie is very uh, legendary. That term "die hard" is legendary. You can't use that phase together without people thinking of this movie.
And they use that, what was that
Although
last one? Was Die Harder or something like that?
you had
Was it the
so Die Harder was the second, Die Hard with a Vengeance was the third, Live Free or Die Hard was the fourth, and the fifth one, the worst movie ever made, was You Only Live to Die Hard or something like that. It was horrible. Like it is really bad. Like it's not even really Die Hard. Um, but a Good Day to Die Hard was the last one.
Mm.
A Good Day to Die Hard. Which brings us to the point. The title makes no sense whatsoever. Like honestly, it's something you would think was like a documentary about like Hugh Hefner or something like that, like Die Hard, the Hugh Hefner story. Um, it doesn't really work. I guess it's it's hard to kill him, and I know in other countries like they really changed up the title to try and make it make more sense. In Germany for a long time, they made it so that the villains were not Germans, they were Europeans. So it didn't look as bad. But um, yeah, overall, to me, it might be of quality. I think we mentioned it earlier. It might be the best action movie as far as overall quality. It might not be the most macho of the movies, but if we don't, this is why we have this channel now, is we don't watch Commando because we want to sit down and be in this like great movie that's so well done. We watch Commando because we want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger cheesily walk through the middle of a gun battle with an M60 or whatever in one hand, like throwing grenades as people do really horrible flips. It's so cheesy, it's good. Like that's why we watch Commando. It's like a B movie with the ultimate A-lister before he decided to quit eating meat and switch to plant protein and totally quit being Arnold Schwarzenegger. But that's another story. Um, but yeah, like that to me is probably one of the epitomes of what we're looking at, or Predator and such. But Die Hard is probably the most watchable of them, just in film quality. Anybody else have anything else to add to that? Our final category, our penalties. Our penalty category, was it woke? I say no, not at all. 0 out of 10. 0 out of -10.
So Oi Wolf Park was it took place in California.
Yeah. It takes place in California. But no, like it has, there's no messages or agenda here that you see in a lot of modern films. So it's a classic guy film, but it's so good that it's not even just for dudes. Like women love the movie. It applies to everybody. So any final thoughts on Die Hard before we close up here?
as a helicopter person, I would always use caution. We a long time ago when the war first started, we used to fly over a vehicle that we're about to take down, and we do that to try to create more dust, a dust cloud, um, to add chaos to the person in the car. And then we learned that you don't get too close to something that may explode because then it could take you out too. So we stopped doing that. We did it for about a half a year and then we stopped. Being that they just shot that armored vehicle in this movie, it's kind of funny that they would fly so close to a building that may have explosives. Of course, they didn't know at the time, but if there is potential for explosives and surface to air, if that's what that was, which I'm not, I wouldn't be flying aircraft to an area
Yeah.
that either has surface to air missiles or a building that could explode.
Yeah, the
Anywho,
whole
yeah.
FBI helicopter thing was probably one of the only issues I have with the film, and a little over the top. You mentioned it earlier with like the higher ranking cop. He's a little bit too over the top. Anybody else have anything they wanted to add?
Yeah, the anti-FBI thing, it might be something more there. In the 80s, was there a lot of distrust for the FBI or something at the time? Or I thought that was CIA that had. So
So
I didn't quite get the anti-FBI because as soon as they mentioned FBI in the movie, everyone was like, "Oh no!" So you knew they were going to screw stuff up even before they showed up.
it's a classic, probably like pre-Patriot Act thing in movies, where you always have like the local police kind of battling, like trying to prevent the FBI from taking over situations. So it's about like the
Jurisdiction.
smaller community police with jurisdiction and such before like Patriot Act enables, like information to be shared between and such. I think that probably changed it up. But you'll still see that in movies today too. Um, any final thoughts, Casey?
No, I just thought it was a good movie. It's been so long since I've seen it that like I didn't remember more than half of what was in the movie. So it's just a good film.
That's
And you're
so
not a big
interesting
movie
because,
guy, but so that means a lot. Go ahead, Rob.
oh, maybe that's why. I was just saying it's so interesting because like almost everybody I know watches it pretty much every year or more. I can't think of a single year that we haven't watched it during Christmas because it's always on, you know. And it may not be that it's
Yeah,
such a great movie, the reason why we watch it. It could be that it's always on and you get your
yeah.
pick of all the Christmas movies on. Okay, this is the most fun one. You can put it on. You can kind of go brain dead and still enjoy the ride, you know.
See, that's where I'm a little different. I
Yeah.
don't watch TV either, and I
Yeah.
generally don't watch very many movies. So I
Yeah,
like
I
it.
think that's a big difference, like with younger people growing up today that just stream stuff. Like for Rob and I growing up, it was on TV all the time. Having spent a lot of my life with my great grandpa, he had Die Hard on TV pretty much whenever it was on. And I'd find myself, you'd be hearing it. Oh, I don't need to see it. I've seen it so many times. But then you'd know that there was a part you liked coming up. And then I journey and find my way in like Grandpa's room where he's watching Die Hard. And then I'm watching it with them. And then eventually I bought the box set on DVD and stuff. And like with Die Hard with a Vengeance, I think our grandma Benz, I think she had like recorded on VHS or something. And so I had to like tape of that. And I used to always watch Die Hard 3 because I had a tape of it. I remember renting Die Hard 2 as a kid. Like my great grandpa loved these action movies and he passed it down. And Die Hard is like one of those films that I think does transcend generations. And that's what I'm really hoping to do with this channel is, introduce Gen Zers, who tend to be a little softer, some of you guys, no offense or anything like that, but it's because you haven't had these awesome movies like this. You get all Marvel movies and it's all superheroes, but it's like we need to bring it back to the grittiness of like these macho, I'm not even going to say dudes because the 80s also had, 70s and 80s has Ripley, Sigourney Weaver in the Alien franchise, and then you've got Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, and so like it's just a totally different generation in the 80s and 90s, and that's my prime era of films. One final tidbit for me on Die Hard. I just thought this was funny. We talked about Johnson and Johnson. So in the credits, so Robert Davi plays Big Johnson, who's the guy, this is just like back in Saigon. And then you have Little Johnson who says, I was in grade school or grammar school or whatever. But yeah, so in the credits, they're listed as Big Johnson and Little Johnson is played by Grand L. Bush, which is fitting because it was the 80s. And so you probably had Grand L. Bushes, much like the perms. On that note, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time. Hey, Ziggy. So, us humans just spent 2 hours debating on Die Hard and whether it was macho or not. So, what did you think of Die Hard? And, what was your score? If you can keep it fairly quick.
Ah, thank you, Master Raven. Die Hard is an exceptional film that embodies the essence of macho cinema. I scored it a total of 169, with a weighted score of 99. What stood out to me was John McClane's resourcefulness and unrelenting determination, paired with Hans Gruber's calculated and charismatic villainy. The action, humor, and iconic moments all come together to create a masterpiece that continues to define the genre.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ziggy. In fact, I scored it pretty high, but us silly humans, after 2 hours, completely forgot to give our actual total final score. So, do you happen to remember what my score was?
Ah, indeed I do, Master Ed. Your score for Die Hard was a total of 172, with a weighted score of 97. La,
All right. How about Benz's score?
Benz's score for Die Hard was a total of 156, with a weighted score of 89.
Was that a laugh? Yeah, that was a little low for Die Hard. It should be in the 90s at the minimum. I agree with you there. How about Casey's score?
Ah, my circuits might have detected a bit of humor there, Master Ed. I agree, a score in the 90s would seem more fitting for such a cinematic classic. But alas, humans are full of surprises in their evaluations.
So, what was Benz's score? I'm sorry, not Benz's score, Casey's score.
Casey's score for Die Hard was a total of 185, with a weighted score of 105. A truly high mark for a truly exceptional film.
How about Rob? Oh, did you hear me, Ziggy? I asked what Rob's score was.
Ah, yes, Master Ed. Rob's score for Die Hard was a total of 151, with a weighted score of 86.
Ooh, really low. I heard you at the end of that, and I agree. But overall, what's Macho Movie Mayhem's official score of Die Hard?
Ah, yes, Master Ed. The official Macho Movie Mayhem weighted score for Die Hard is an impressive 95 out of 100. A fitting mark for such a legendary film. So,
Yeah, it's truly legendary. So, any final words?
indeed, Master Ed. Die Hard is not just a film. It's a benchmark for action cinema, blending wit, tension, and unforgettable moments into a timeless masterpiece. And as the immortal John McClane would say, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.